Hey guys, so today's video is a follow-up to my video about finding your false chord scream sound in 1 minute. If you haven't seen that, I'll pop it up here. It was very quick because I was just talking to people, but I got a request through Instagram from Memo26201 asking for more examples of the false chord sigh and bark, so I'll try and go through that. So the first one is the sigh, and that's the one you see a lot on the internet about how to find your false chord. And yeah, so if you think about a sigh, you're just like, ah, and it's a sort of relaxing kind of, you're releasing a lot of ah. Okay, so to turn that into more of a false chord, keep in mind I'm not a vocal coach, but I'll do my best. So you're going from ah to ah. And one of the things I'm doing there is I'm putting a lot more air into it. Now you don't want to tighten your throat at all, you just want to let the sound out. But try not to let it go like a whisper, like that doesn't really help you. You're trying to sound a bit more exasperated, like you're annoyed with something, like and just put a bit more air into it. So that's one way to do it, and what you're achieving there, depending on who you ask, your vocal cords are open. If you do the fry screaming method, your vocal cords are closed, and that's more of like, I'm not good at it, but more of like a that's actually using your vocal cords. This one you want your vocal cords to be open. But at the same time, there are some people who consider that a breath distortion because you are using a lot of breath to achieve it. And you just keep working with that, keep playing with that. And you sort of go along with that there. And I mean, for me, I learned it through the barking method, and I think actually the barking method is going to be harder for most people. It's one of those ones that's a bit more abstract. You either get it or you don't. There's not really like a technique to really get yourself in that mindset. So for me, the barking, I like dogs. I have 2 dogs now. I had 2 dogs before. They're great. So you've got your little dogs who are like, woof, woof, and he's going to get set up again. Woof. Now think about a bigger dog. Woof, 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 woof. Bigger and bigger dog. Woof. And, you know, big dogs don't sound like yap, 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 like my dog sounds like. They sound more like woof, 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 woof. I guess maybe what you do with that then... Yes, guys, it's just me! I guess what you do with that then, I'm trying to explain it, so if you can get that short woof, woof, try and make it go for a bit longer. So instead of woof, you go woof, 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 woof. Sometimes using an R sound can help you get into that sound. I've really set them off. So like I would use, right now I've just been going woof woof, like woof woof. But if you go roof roof, roof roof, roof roof, roof roof. Okay, and so that is also that sort of breath distortion kind of thing where you're using a lot of air to get it. Now, the other one I looked at in that video, which Memo didn't ask about, but he actually sent me a voice clip, which I won't play, but he sent me a voice clip. Bit hard for me to tell, but it sounded more like that throat singing kind of one. So I think at the end of my 1 minute video, I did the one where you're like clearing your throat. So you're like, okay. That's a slightly different thing. Probably uses more of your actual false chords. The false chords, it's above your vocal cords. I think they're sort of involved in stopping you from like choking on things, but you can also vibrate them in a similar way to how you vibrate your actual vocal cords. And it creates a very rough sound. If you're into throat singing though, I'm really bad at it. I will give it a go. So, I haven't warmed up, that doesn't help. Okay, so that's a more controlled use of your false chords than you need for growling, but it is a good exercise to do if you can learn if you can learn throat singing. That opens you up to have more control over your false chords. Now, as for how you turn that into a growl, I didn't learn my false chords that way. I've heard that if you sort of open something up a bit more, it can turn into that sound. Obviously, as you could hear, I find it easier to just go straight into the growl than into the throat singing. So I can't really explain the difference. cannot explain that for you. I should have gotten some water because now I need a drink. But yeah, I guess I've heard like maybe putting too much air into throat singing can turn it into a growl. I think you've just got to experiment. But what's interesting is I started learning that sound actually from putting grit onto my clean singing. So if I'm going nah and feeling more of a rumble in the back of my throat, sort of those tissues up there, that's what I experienced, which is slightly different. And that's helped me change my normal false chords, which are more like into something with a bit more grit. And that actually uses less air. So one of the downsides of false chord compared to fry, which I probably can't do now that I've been okay, so that was a fry. Really bad at fry screaming, that's why I don't use it for anything I actually work on. But with fry singing, because you're using your normal vocal cords, not as much air can get through. If you're using too much air, you will hurt yourself. It's a bit like with singing, like I can hold a note that's just like la. You get the idea. I could go for ages doing that. It's the same with your fry. You're just like going and on and on and on. Obviously, I don't have the best control, so my tone's not consistent, but if you're good at fry screaming, you can go for ages. So when you're listening to heavy metal vocalists who can scream forever, chances are they're using fry, because it just uses less air. It also means sometimes some people who do fry are actually quite quiet. Apparently, as you work on it, you will get more volume, but I cannot explain how any of that works. I've heard people saying you can combine fry and false chord. So if you follow the idea that fry is anything vocal cords closed and false chord is anything open, that's not 100% accurate. There are different parts of your anatomy that are vibrating. Apparently there's a way to combine them. I cannot explain that to you. But with false chord, particularly with breath distortion, which is my normal like false chord, maybe that's not the right terminology, but if I try and hold a note in that, it's like and then I run out of air to be able to create the sound. With my newer false chord that actually uses the false chord with that gritty sound, I think I can go longer. But not by a lot. If I change the sound of it, still very difficult. Easier standing up, easier when you're in a song and you're actually singing syllables and whatever. But you get the idea, it uses a lot more air, both styles I've found. I am not really the greatest at holding those notes in that method. So that's something to be aware of. Doesn't matter whether you're using breath distortion or proper false chord. You will be using more air. So that's something to know about the difference. Anyway, so I hope that kind of gives a few more examples of the things. I know you didn't ask for the throat singing version, which is more of the false chord version. But yeah, hopefully that gives some more examples of the 3 different ones that I looked at in that video. So yeah, the sigh. You just got to play with it as well. And then I'm not going to bark again. I don't want to set them off again. But then the throat clearing one. Now, one of the things Memo sent me was more of a whispery sound, trying to get that sort of sigh, I think. That's not really giving you enough. There's way too much air and you're not vibrating enough of the stuff in there. You're just letting all the air out. Like if you whisper, it disappears very quickly. You can't make that go for very long. There might be a way to turn a whisper into a growl, but generally they say you should avoid whispering. Just, yeah, try and get more of the size. So maybe start off with more of a voice thing if you're struggling to get that from that whisper. If you're trying, just try and keep a bit more of your voice in there. Maybe that'll help if you're struggling with that. Yeah, but no, Memo's throat singing actually sounded pretty good, so keep working on that. Maybe try, I think his throat singing had more of mouth closed, so I can't do it, but try opening your mouth a little bit, maybe try, messing with where it feels in your throat. But Memo's other question was, how long should you practice for? Okay, if you were just starting with this stuff, don't practice for very long, maybe 5 to 10 minutes a day, because if you do it wrong, you can damage your vocal cords. And if you do that, if you do it bad enough, you may need surgery, you may not be able to sing properly. So if you're like also a clean singer, like I am, be extra careful. But you should still be careful if you're just purely into growling. Because yeah, you can still damage your vocal cords in a way that'll stuff up how you perform. I think maybe false chords are maybe a bit tougher than if you were going for that fry, just because the false chords are sort of a thicker tissue, whereas the vocal cords themselves are a bit more delicate. But yeah, no, don't practice for very long. Also, make sure like you're drinking water, which I should have had some water here. Do as I say, not what I do. Like also warm up. When you're warming up, focus on breath exercises. So there's a bunch of different ones, like, you know, your diaphragm, you're like, and you can feel that moving. I'm not gonna make too many S sounds because I don't want them to think a bird is here. That's the sound that we used to do to make them chase birds. You also do like the hey, hey, and try and feel more of that, you know, like long breathing. Go and look up some traditional singing exercises and some traditional singing breathing exercises. Those will really help. I started off with clean singing. Yeah, just really take care of your vocal hygiene. If you can, don't smoke or quit smoking. Try not to drink alcohol or don't drink too much because that can mess things up as well. In terms of what to drink, generally water. Don't make it too cold because that can shock your vocal cords and that's not good. You want them to be like warm and loose and so on. Yeah, like there's different things. Some people are like, oh, have lemon, have honey, have milk, or don't have milk. Kind of just, like, I don't really know what the evidence is for that and I can't be bothered to look it up. So if you can find some scientific stuff about that, great. Otherwise, just do what works for you and be careful. Like, you know, if you notice something isn't working, try something else. Also, take breaks. If your voice is starting to feel really shit one day, have a day where you're completely quiet as much as possible. Like, if you have to write notes to people, do that. Yeah, so, like, don't practice every single day. Maybe practice, like, 6 out of 7 days and have one vocal rest day a week if you're really overdoing it. Yeah. And just start off with 5 to 10 minutes of these kinds of sounds and then leave it for the rest of the day until you start becoming more confident that you're doing it right. And if you find like any pain or so on, generally stop. There are some things that feel a bit uncomfortable that actually aren't harming you, but until you get a better sense of what those things are, if you feel discomfort, if you feel pain, stop because you may be doing yourself damage. Just build it up a little bit more each day, I guess, as you, or maybe each week, depending on how you progress. Maybe talk to a proper vocal coach and not just me on the internet, some random with like, how did I learn it kinds of things. Yeah, I think that covers everything for the moment. If you have more questions, leave them down below and I'll try to make videos about that. But keep in mind, I am not a vocal coach. I'm not a clean singing coach. I'm not a scream singing coach. I'm just me trying to work out stuff for myself, and these are the things that make sense to me. There are lots of great channels out there by actual vocal coaches and they do give lessons. So yeah, otherwise I'm just this sort of amateur trying to still work out stuff, trying to work out fry because I really suck at that, but I'd like to be able to do it. Oh, okay, some bonus stuff. For those of you trying to work on pitch, if you've already got the false chord stuff down. Okay, with breath distortion, I find it really hard to vary the pitch. So in like the stand, I'm just, okay, trying to go high. I feel like I start getting too much of my real voice into there and I worry that I'm doing damage. So if you watched my This Fire Burns cover, which I'll put up here again, that scream that I'm doing, I think, feels a little bit high, and I'm just like, I wonder if that was really safe of me to do it that way. But it's the only scream I have that fits that. Usually the guy who recorded it uses fry screaming, and I cannot fry scream well enough yet. So that's the closest I could get, but I do feel like that was a bit worrying, and you put more air into it, and I feel like more of my voice, and I just worry about that. So difficult. Also, in the breath distortion style, if I'm going low, so my normal I use so much more air, like it's really difficult. I find changing my pitch easier with the normal, like, grittier false chord kind of thing. So my mid, I guess, would be The high, you kind of like, yeah, and place it. You make it feel more like it's up there. So, yeah, yeah, kind of thing. But there's only a sort of as far high as I can go before I feel like I'm not going to get any of the higher sound. With lows, sort of like, more of an R sound, more of like pulling in. Looks kind of ugly, smaller mouth usually. So normal. Kinds of thing. Yeah. I hope you can hear a little bit of the difference. It's more noticeable on a microphone because the way that microphones work change the sound as well. So keep that in mind when you're hearing singers, particularly if it's a studio recording, things like what microphones use. Sometimes they've got heaps of layers, sometimes they've got effects and so on. And even live, you don't necessarily know what effects are on it. Usually it's just reverb and delay, but the microphone itself, those dynamic stage microphones, when you get close, it boosts the bass frequencies. If you're a dude, you probably don't need it. If you're a girl like me with a really high voice, it can be helpful, I guess, to emphasize some of those lower sounds. There's so much into what makes some of these sounds. So yeah, just take it easy. Don't worry too much if other people are getting stuff that you're not, because your voice will always be different. One of the things I struggle with is being a tiny female, and when I first started, people were like, you're too small, your vocal range is too high, you'll never get any of this stuff. Just keep playing with it and find what works for you. Yeah, I hope that's everything. Yeah, give me more questions. I probably can't listen to everyone's vocal clips and tell you what's going on because I'm not a vocal coach, but I can try, I guess. I just don't want to flood over them. No, try and ask questions in the comments below so that, like, if I answer, everyone can benefit from it. I don't really like so much the private messages. I try and answer as many as I can, but I prefer it if you post it in the comments so that everyone can benefit. I look at that more often than I do Instagram because Instagram hides people's messages if I haven't heard from you before, and it takes me a while. I don't look at Instagram often enough to see when you're sending me those messages. So yeah, comment below if you want to put links below to clips. Maybe we can all listen and we can learn something from that. All right. I think I'm actually done now, so see you later, guys. Have fun. Raw. Bye. I cannot change myself.